do some lecturing for some major dental companies, Henry Schein, Care Credit, iTero, Straumann Implants. And a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Europe and went through Israel and did some lecturing there. It was an exciting thing for my family because my wife, her family is from Israel. My daughter was doing a semester abroad there. And during our tour, we went to Jerusalem and we visited the Western Wall, which is the holiest spot in the world. And I saw the men and women who were spending their time praying to the wall. So I waited till the end of the day. It was a beautiful time to be there. And I saw two gentlemen walking away from the wall. And I went up to them and I said, "Excuse me, sirs, but would you mind answering a few questions?" And they said, "Sure." I said, "How often do you come here to pray?" And they looked at me and they said, "We come here every single day." And I said, "How long do you spend here when you do come?" And he said, "We spend the entire day from morning till night in prayer." And I said, "Well, could you tell me, that's quite a commitment, what is it that you pray for when you come here?" And one of the gentlemen looked at me and said, "Well, we pray for peace. We pray for unity and harmony. We pray that someday the Palestinians and the Israelis will be able to live together in peace and harmony throughout the Middle East." And I said, "Well, how is that working for you?" He said, "Some days it's like talking to a wall." And it reminds me of what's happening in many, many practices today, and that is too many dentists are relying on hope as a strategy. This is not a time to be complacent and to wait for conditions to change. This is absolutely a time where we need to be proactive and to decide what we need to do to become successful, and then to act on those things so that we start to move our practices in the right direction.
So Steve and I have been lecturing around the country for the last few years to great audiences like yourselves, and we have lots of private clients, individual clients that we work with on a month-to-month basis. And across the board, one of the top questions is, "I just need more fee-for-service patients. Can you help me get more fee-for-service new patients?" And we feel, and it's always interesting because the doctors and sometimes even the team, they always think that that's the magic bullet. If we just had more new fee-for-service patients, everything will be fine. But we find that that's really putting the cart before the horse, because 9 times out of 10, the offices that we encounter, once we start chatting with them a little bit, they really don't have the purpose and the intention and the systems that are required in that potential new patient phone call to turn that potential into a reality. So what we would like to do is really have all of you think about the systems that you're using now for your new patient phone call. We're going to speak a little bit more about that in a few minutes, and analyze it and say to yourselves, what is the purpose of that call? As you have that initial phone call, what would you like that to become? And take that back to your office and do that as an exercise and see if everyone on the team is on the same page. Most of the time, not everyone understands. And if someone that is not the person who normally answers the phone happens to answer it that day, like the dental assistant, then what? Everyone that ever touches the telephone when it rings needs to know the purpose of that call.
So why do some practices struggle? It's easy to come up with some of the obvious excuses that we're undercapitalized, that we have the wrong people doing things, that surprisingly among dentists there might be poor leadership, that there are bad market conditions and a struggling economy. But even with all of these things going on, there are still practices that are really making it and being successful and doing the things that are enriching and fulfilling to them and their patients and their teams. So what is it that is the difference? The difference does not lie in insurance or location. It lies with more of a decision to be successful, to do the things that are necessary to move ahead and become independent of some of the outside conditions that might be affecting us. Why do some practices succeed? Well, let's go back to the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, around 1900. The federal government enlisted Samuel Langley to develop the first airplane. They gave him $50,000. They commissioned him for this project, told him resources would be no problem. He himself was the chair of the Smithsonian Institute. He was a physics professor from Harvard. They gave him access to all the great minds in the country. And they gave him the promise of great riches and great fame. 1,000 miles away in Ohio, there were two uneducated brothers who owned a bicycle shop who had a different dream. Not that they could make money and not that they would become famous, but they had the belief and the dream that they could change the way our lives function, the way we transported ourselves, the way products were transported, if we could somehow develop the ability to take items off the ground and take people off the ground and transport them in a quicker way. Well, history will tell you in December of 1903, it was the Wright brothers plane that took off from Kitty Hawk. On December 18th, Samuel Langley retired from his position with the government's program. He went on to fame in developing airplanes and being a pioneer in aeronautics, but he never acquired the fame and the fortune that he had expected. You see, he worked for a paycheck. The Wright brothers worked for a belief system and a dream. What is it that separates some of us from our peers? What is it that separates great companies like Apple from the companies that make products that are very similar? If we take the companies that are listed on the right side, these are all very successful technology companies that make wonderful products. And what they tell you is, we happen to make computers that are easy to use, beautifully designed, and user-friendly. But Apple had a very, very different approach. What Apple said is, we're going to change the status quo. We're going to think differently, and we're going to tell you how your lives will be improved, your lives will be enriched, you will enjoy our products. And by the way, we just happen to make computers and MP3 players and phones. Now would you like to buy one? And of course, you will realize that with that type of a belief system and those core values, they have become the leading technology company in the country.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creeds. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream.
So was Martin Luther King the only black man who grew up in the times of the pre-civil rights movement, who had a difficult lifetime in growing up? Or was he the only one who developed such an amazing gift of the spoken word? He is not. There were many who fell under the same descriptions. The difference was, though, that most of them were speaking about what they were unhappy with and what they wanted to change. Whereas Martin Luther King got up and talked about what his dream was. He was a leader who inspired. And by taking the approach of talking about his dream and talking about his beliefs, he was able to cross demographic barriers. He was able to cross barriers of race, of religion, of political persuasion. He was able to gather 1 million people on the Mall in Washington who shared that dream with him. It was not the "I have a plan" speech. It was the "I have a dream" speech. And you see, our patients, they have dreams as well. They have dreams that we can make them look like the movie stars they see on TV, that we can change their lives and make them feel with better self-esteem, more pride, make them feel younger, make them feel more virile. These are the abilities that we have in our wonderful profession to impact on the people we serve. You see, patients are not coming us to treat teeth. They're coming to us so that we can change their lives. They're not coming to us for treatment. They're coming to us for results. And we have to keep that in mind as we speak to them, as we bring them to our offices, how we engage them in our offices, and we start to do the things that raise their perceived value of the services that we provide.